You know those conversations where you just get lost in the moment and suddenly you look at the clock and 4 hours have passed? Then you try to leave the conversation and instead do an extended Midwest goodbye. Well, I suppose I better head on out. But hey, before I go, I wanted to get that recipe for the dip that you made. This was so much fun. Yeah, we should do it again soon. Oh, hey, before I go, did you see that? Oh my God. I left my keys inside. Let me come back in. Well, that happened to me recently in the studio. Only it wasn't 4 hours. It was like nearly 8. Like any good Midwest goodbye, it was equal parts lovely and exhausting. In this video, you'll see what I made, how I made it, and what were my chief thoughts and concerns while developing this accidental series of collages. So if that sounds like fun to you, then strap in because this is going to be quite a ride. Oh, by the way, if you're new here, I'm Jess. I'm a collage artist, and I'm so happy that you're here. Okay, let's get started. When I began, I had absolutely no intention of creating a series of collages. I was talking to my mom on the phone because I found that collage time is a great opportunity for me to call a loved one and just chat. It's definitely not a great way to create actual collages because let me tell you, it wasn't until I hung up with my mom that I actually really started getting to work. But while I was doing the mindless task of cutting out pieces, chatting with her really made the time pass quickly. After I got off the phone with Mom, it was apparent that I didn't really have much of a direction. I had cut out a lot, but with absolutely no rhyme or reason. But I didn't want to stop there. I was still feeling super creative, so I grabbed one of my go-to books, which is this vintage book of, it's not a vintage book, which is this book of vintage handbags. I really like it because it has lots of full-length figures of women. On my desk, I had this lovely book of flowers handy, and here's where I think the idea sparked that I wanted to cover their heads with flowers. There are lots of reasons to keep your desk tidy, and sometimes I really do want to be less of a mess. However, having books surround me really keeps my creativity flowing. Having them all set up on a bookshelf is great most of the time, but when I'm working, the books I use are the ones that are easy for me to get to. This idea with the flower heads is extremely common. Just head replacement in general is a fairly common collage technique. But that's also a really good thing because that means it's really repeatable. And if this idea brings you any joy at all, then you should totally try it out in your own studio. And tell me how it goes. On this collage, things really started to take shape when I found this image in National Geographic of this scene of a microscope in this moody, dark academia room. I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if I took one of the flower heads that I had cut out and placed it on the microscope slide, and then placed the flower-headed women around the microscope. The idea that I'm playing with here is that women are often figuratively put under a microscope. Their self or identity can be hidden by the superficial. In this case, the flower head represents the erasure of identity and reduces them to pretty objects. And here I thought I was done, but then my friend visited. My friend is an incredible artist herself, and her focus is in photography, so she came by to shoot me in my studio. I felt super awkward. I'm not used to having other people physically in here with me, and it's a really small room, so we made it work, and I really enjoyed having her over. While she was visiting, she took a look at this collage and noted that it seemed like it was missing something. Some figure or person that would represent society. And you know what? I agreed with her. In my mind, the microscope was society, but without another figure, I think that idea was getting lost. I pulled this cutout of a scientist that I had used on a previous temporary collage and decided to place him in the scene. I liked his lab coat and I thought he kind of fit with the microscope vibe. If this had been in my mind at the onset, I probably wouldn't have ended up with this exact composition, but I didn't, and frankly, since things were glued down already, I needed to make do with the situation at hand. As is always the case when I hang out with other creative people, I got super energized and the flower woman continued to call to me. I decided I wanted to keep trying to play with this idea and see what other backgrounds I could put them in and how I could continue to tell the story. In particular, I was interested in expressing that while this phenomenon of identity erasure is a function of how our society values women, this collage series isn't about pitting women against men. I found this image of a woman standing under an outdoor shower, and I really liked how dynamic her pose was. As I was looking through potential backgrounds, I didn't have any particular idea in mind. I was letting my mind wander over the possibilities. I was searching for nice color contrast or just generally visually interesting settings. When I saw this explosion of color, I knew it was perfect. From a conceptual standpoint, I liked the idea that even alone, even when seeming to embrace yourself and stand in your power, the impact of this erasure is still felt. It has echoes. From a purely aesthetic standpoint, I just liked how her arm thrown upwards made it seem like she was interacting with the flow of these colorful particles. Because I wanted the collages to be about society as a whole, I wanted to include more women of different ethnicities. This is where my book selection has failed me. So I pulled out a couple magazines in an effort to find some non-white women. I do have a lovely book of Latina beauty. That one is a great resource, but not for this project, unfortunately. Its images mostly consist of full-page close-ups. Gorgeous pictures, but they're just not at the scale I was going for. Finally, Zinc magazine came through for me, and I was able to pull a few options for this series. At this point, I had cut out several figures and lots of flower heads, so I was working on several collages at once. This is probably one of the easiest ways to fall into a flow state. Once I have a bunch of pieces, I can start moving them around and trying different things out. This is where things get really wild in my head, but in real life, it looks like I'm just sort of confused and waffling around a lot. Things might look like a mess, but you have to trust the process. I had this cutout of the woman from the fashion magazine, and I loved her pose. Unlike some of the others where the subject is standing straight on to the viewer, this one is relaxed. Initially, I was thinking that I would have her resting inside some sort of large scene. This sort of castle was a potential, but it just didn't feel quite right. Because I wasn't really finding anything in the Book of Europe, I tried pulling out another National Geographic, and I found this lovely image of a wildflower area that seemed to work really well with the lady in yellow. Pretty quickly, I also found this ad for hearing loss, and I thought it could look good with the lady in yellow. I end up setting this one to the side for a little bit, but I like these two pieces together. As I continued searching through the National Geographics, I found this back cover ad that I just really liked because of the way that all of the characters were looking toward a central point. I played with the idea of putting the laid-back lady in the basket of chicken, almost like she's about to be consumed. After looking through the flower book again, I didn't find any images that would work with the size I needed for the mom's face, so I pulled out this calendar that I had of really close-up flowers and started to trim down one that I thought might work. Once I had all the pieces placed together, I realized I didn't like it. So I decided to make a callback to the first collage, the one with the microscope. And I took some of the disembodied flower heads and placed them in and amongst the chicken. Outside of the context of this series, I don't know that this really makes a whole lot of sense, but I like the idea here nonetheless. And honestly, who says art has to make sense, right? I found this blue sky background that I thought worked well in terms of contrasting colors with a slightly gold-toned family. Plus it had some text on it, and I decided to give poetry a shot by blacking out some of the words and letters. This sort of poetry functions a lot like collage does. It requires you to use what's there rather than make something up whole cloth. If you're curious about the final poem, I've put it in the video description box. I'd say that the majority of my backgrounds for this series are nature-focused, and frankly, that has more to do with the fact that I have loads of nature-related books rather than any particular concept I was going for. Plus, the nature scenes just tended to pair nicely with the flower heads from a visual perspective. This is definitely one of those times where I would feel nervous if someone were to ask me why I made a particular background choice. There's this expectation for artists to always have some deep reason or point that they're making with every creative decision they make. But for me, at least, in collage, you really are often responding primarily to the materials you've collected. So the reason might really just be because I thought it looked good. Maybe the colors were harmonious or they contrasted well. Maybe I liked the way the figures were sitting inside the scene. There's lots of reasons, good reasons, but none of them sound deep and artsy enough. And then my imposter syndrome takes over and I start to panic. Maybe they'll realize that I don't know anything and I'm a fraud. Isn't the mind a beautiful thing? After I was finished with that one, I started looking for more backgrounds and ran across this collection of men mapping the moon. I liked how active they looked, and I thought that the way they were interacting would make for a cool collage if I placed one of the flower women in the center. Cutting them out was a pain in the tuchus, though. There was a lot of detail in this, and you'll see that I totally cut out a piece of one of the guy's shoulders. I didn't notice until way later, and it was too late. The piece was somewhere in the pile of scraps, never to be recovered again. I wanted to find something that had enough contrast that would allow our characters to show up. This one with the moon could have worked out well, but I ended up with this sort of yellow-blue skyline. Even though I liked this, I wanted to think about it a little bit more, and so I moved on to this lady in repose. At some point off camera, I guess, I had attached this hand to her. It's a little weird in terms of placement, but I wanted to continue the hand thing, which I had done previously. I also did another one of those Blackout poems, which I'll add to the description. After a few final glue repairs, these 2 collages were done. Toward the end of the session, I found this really cool industrial scene, and I have no idea what is actually going down in the original photo. I guess I could have read the article, but ew. We're on the final couple of collages for this series, and it has been quite a ride. If you've stuck with me until now, thanks so much for being here. As I continued to work through the series, it got a lot easier as I went along. Collages came together fairly quickly, and I got a stronger sense for the pieces that I liked together. At this point, I'd been collaging for so long my camera died and needed to be recharged twice. So I decided to leave this unglued and return to it in the morning. Good morning, friends. It is day 3 of Kitten crying. It's day 3 of working on these deadheaded collages, and I'm having a really great time. I woke up with a lot of energy. That's not true. I woke up and now I'm making some liquid energy and we're gonna go head to the studio and keep trucking away. Then tell me what happened. What happened, baby? The thing about these National Geographic magazines is that they are stapled and glued, I believe, and so in some cases it is really hard not to accidentally tear it, even though I cut as carefully as possible. Picking back up on a collage that I've left unfinished overnight is always a risk because I have a tendency to sort of forget where I was planning to put things. I never think that I'll forget, but it feels like it happens every time. This is a great example of that happening. I accidentally placed the yellow flower heads on the wrong people at first. Luckily, it wasn't glued down for long, so I was able to pull them up and move it, but ugh. My final collage of the series didn't end up with either of the two pieces I started out with, which is pretty funny. I had this black and white image of a woman sort of walking. She's like mid-stride and looking at the camera. And then for her head, I had this like purple and yellow flower. But no matter the background I tried to place her on, nothing really felt right. I don't know if it's just because the colors seemed a little off, or maybe her figure and the way that she was like interacting with any of the backgrounds didn't feel right. I don't know. Then I found this image of an orchid. It appeared to have a little number 8 on its petal, and since this would have been my 8th collage in the series, there was some fun symmetry to the idea of using it. Unfortunately, the flower head was large and didn't look quite right on the body I had picked out for it. So I went in search of a new figure. I found one I thought was kind of perfect. The size was right, the colors seemed to go together. But then I decided on this lovely time-lapse image of the night sky set in a stony nature scene. And suddenly, I don't know, I just thought that a yellow flower would pop better. So I changed the flower too. That was a little disappointing, but it's also one of the interesting things about collage. It's very much a conversation between your pieces and you, and once you change one thing or add something, suddenly the collage might have to respond in other ways. And there you have it, 8 collages completed. Woo! I feel like I sort of fell into making all of these, and once I had enough pieces cut out and a concept, they all just sort of came together really quickly. If you want to enjoy some more collage shenanigans in the studio, then check this video out. Or if you're curious to see my preferred collage style, then check this one out. Okay, I think that's it. Bye! See ya! Bye! Bye! Bye.